Steve, we heard that Ukrainian President Zelensky may be joining as well.
Yeah, there's been a lot of speculation about whether Zelensky would come here in person. Bloomberg News is confirming through anonymous sources at this point that he perhaps is on his way. He would be then participating in person here in Hiroshima in some last-minute added sessions on Ukraine on Sunday. Again, we have not gotten official confirmation from the host country being Japan, but the speculation and the sources are telling us is that Volodymyr Zelensky is going to be here at the G7. And again, that will help punctuate the G7's unity, if you will, on some of the sanctions and tightening of sanctions and adding of new sanctions against Russia and its ability to continue to wage war in Ukraine, obviously. Now, Bloomberg News is also learning from sources that the G7 has essentially ruled out imposing an all-out ban on Russian exports, and instead deciding to essentially, make certain exemptions available. So they were talking about flipping it around and banning all exports and then allowing certain exemptions. But they're going to keep this existing round of sanctions, add other sanctions, and then on a case-by-case basis allow certain exports to continue. So that is the latest one right now. Again, they're trying to close some loopholes to allow Russia to evade the current round of sanctions. So we're just looking at some of the formalities right now. Sorry, I'm just looking at the live feed where we're seeing some ceremonies, obviously, around at the Peace Memorial Park across the street from where we are right now. And there's the end of the feed. And again, it's a poignant reminder with the atomic bomb dome here in Hiroshima 78 years ago, where the first nuclear weapon was obviously detonated at a time when Rahm Emanuel, the U.S. ambassador to Japan, has been talking about Vladimir Putin's cavalier threat of potentially using nuclear weapons in Ukraine.
Japan is what I refer to as the supply chain of the supply chain. There are about 18, 19 companies here in Japan that operate 40 to 75 to 80% of market share worldwide in their space. You cannot produce a semiconductor without a Japanese company involved in it, if not multiple companies.
Well, that obviously is the wrong soundbite. That was a soundbite from Rahm Emanuel when he was talking about Micron's investment into Japan and diversifying and securing supply chains for chips into Japan. The other reference I was talking about was, again, where he talked about the Vladimir Putin's cavalier attitude towards nuclear weapons, why that is so poignant, being with the G7 hosted in what's called Japan's Peace City.
Steve, when we look at what they're doing there, essentially they're in a bit of a row about how they can stop gemstones being taken into Europe, in particular, and other places. A total ban on gemstones has been put on the table. That's been rejected by the EU. But they're looking at what they can do to restrict trade here. In fact, Charles Michel said Russian diamonds are not forever. Anyway, Steve, so what they're doing is looking for further ways of, I suppose, cornering Russia, if you will, and trying really to, at the moment, squeeze Russia further without perhaps resorting to sanctions as the only policy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Janet Yellen last week in Niigata talked about closing those loopholes that Russia's been able to evade the sanctions and get much-needed technologies and other products to continue to wage its war in Ukraine. And the G7 is discussing a number of other issues, obviously, to cut that off. They're talking about cutting off about 70 entities from Russia and other countries receiving U.S. exports by adding them to the Commerce Department's export blacklist, as well as close a bunch of those other loopholes. So that's going to be something high on the agenda over the next couple of days here as the G7 Leaders Summit kicks off today and runs through the weekend.